Hello. Finally, another harness highlight. And this one's really cool and special. This is a longtime friend of mine, internet homie Andrew. This is for his ITB setup on a Series 4 RX-7 equipped with a Haltech 550 ECU. And I'm really stoked to see this car running. And I want to show you guys this harness because this is technically like version 2 of how I'm going about doing these. So from quality, material, routing, and overall reliability and sustainability, all those different factors have been taken into consideration from just years now, over 3+ years of R&D and knowing what works for these cars and knowing what doesn't. So let's just go through it. Over here on his setup, we have this Haltech 550 AMP connector that plugs right into the ECU. And for Andrew, we have a CAN interface. So Andrew plans on running dual widebands. His setup is pretty cool, so that will all run via CAN. So we have that all set up. Then we just have our chassis connector. So this is very simple. This connects right to the body harness on the passenger kick panel, and it provides power to the harness, coolant temp signal, fuel pump relay, things like that. So this one's pretty interesting. Every harness I send out, I send a guide. There's, I believe, 6 wires or whatever. And this is so you can have a working alternator and your alternator charge system functions properly. Unfortunately, this connector is no longer available. It's not something I can easily source, but 2-3 minutes of your time, you just depin the old one off of your OEM harness and pin this right up, and you're good to go. So that's all in the instructions for every harness that's sent out. Super easy, and it takes less than 2 to 3 minutes to do. So that's all there. That's all in the cabin. And if you see, I've used some pretty new sleeving material. So this stuff is rated for much higher temperatures, and overall the quality is significantly better. I'm happy I made the change, and it's going to look super clean in this car. He's going for a tucked look, and I'll get into that. So yeah, moving up right at the firewall, we have our wiper harness. It's a street car, so we're going to keep the wipers intact. And then we also have this connector over here so he can run his electric fans. This is set up and for dual speed fans, or 2 fans if he chooses to do so. So 2 wires here are just a switch output, and then the one on the right is 12 volts. And I provided the customer here with a pigtail so he could wire up his electric fan relays and tuck it however he likes. So moving up in the harness, we keep going and we keep going. This is the cool part. Even before we even get to the keg part, if you see, I've created a branch off in the harness. This just ends up not only looking cleaner, but it gives the customer a better idea. I have my reasons for doing this without getting into technical details, but over here we have our ignition sub-harness, and then we have a fuel pressure sensor. He could use this for oil pressure if he chooses to, but this just says PS, so it's a generic pressure sensor. This is a very common sensor used with Delphi style connector, so he can use it for either or. So it just says PS. It's labeled PS over here if you guys can see it. But yeah, I'll get into the ignition sub harness because that's another special part to me that I really enjoyed making on this harness, and it's something I ended up doing very differently. So over here it's pretty basic. We have EV14 style injectors for his ITB setup. It's the EFI hardware kit, if I recall. So I just told him to send me pictures of what he was running, and I was able to identify what was necessary for us to get this all running. He's running a stock crank angle sensor, which is more than enough for his power levels and what he's planning on doing. He's only going to be revving at stock RPM, so no need for any trigger kits or anything like that. The stock crank angle sensor has been proven to be really reliable. I personally have it on my car, and it hasn't been an issue at all. So pretty stoked about that. We have our engine harness ground over here, so that just grounds onto the engine block. Then over here, this is our TPS connector. This is a weather pack style connector. Now, his TPS, he got it actually secondhand, and somebody wired a Delphi weather pack connector onto the TPS sensor. So I had him send me a photo, and I pretty much was able to identify what kind of TPS it was and the wiring for it. So I wired it accordingly so he doesn't have to figure that out. I figured out that hard work for him. And then over here, pretty much basic. If you see in all my harnesses, I run GM sensors you can get from the parts store. So this is our coolant temp sensor that will hook onto the back of the water, the water pump assembly. And if you see this flying lead over here, that's just for the coolant temp to the cluster. So he can just wire this in. This goes to the side of the block like so. And then this one's unique in the sense that if you see it's really long, that's just our intake air temp sensor. That's also a GM sensor. Everything's kind of relatively up in the air. And again, we're going for that tuck look, so it gives him some space. So he's gonna figure out how he wants to run his IAT sensor, but this is more than enough wire to work with for him to do so. There's even a longer one over here. So Andrew chose to keep his Series 4 alternator. It's worked for him and hasn't given him any issues. And I don't find that it will be problematic for the way his car is set up. Even though it's a street car with, you know, full interior, radio, and things like that, the S4 alternator works. It's when you start doing things like electric power steering or adding subwoofers, you may want to incorporate a Series 5 alternator, but he can easily change this out. And I also make an adapter harness that allows you to do it without cutting up this harness. So it's super, super long. And the reason why it's super long is he has a relocated alternator setup. So he has like a side mounted bracket. So I actually use my car as a reference to figure out the length. And this is more than long. This will reach and give him no issues. And he won't have any issues as far as resistance using the proper gauge wires. So we have that all intact, and the reason why we have that is so he can retain the working alternator regulator and all that works properly, and he has the working dash lights. Aside from that, that's the engine harness portion. As you can see, turned out pretty good, and I'm really, really happy with this product. So we're gonna go over to the ignition sub harness. It's relatively simple, but you guys haven't really seen me do something like this before, so I want to actually show you guys it. So he's going to be running LS D585 coils. These came off of different GM trucks, Corvettes, things like that. They're all labeled, so as you can see, leading 2, trailing 1, everything's labeled, so it's really difficult to install this wrong. And that connects right to the engine harness like so. And then over here, we have our battery post, and I'll get into that. This you're gonna hook up to your OEM fuse box, and there's a 10mm fuse. You can hook this up directly to the battery. Usually it's cleaner to just hook it up to the fuse box. We have our tachometer signal, so this would hook up to the OEM or the original trailing coil connector, and that's so you can have a working tachometer, as from the factory, FC's, their tach signal comes off of this connector. So that's for him to receive, have a working tach signal without having to chop up the body harness. Now we're gonna move up here in the harness. What's really nice is we have a fuse and, well, we have a fuse and a relay. So this is really nice for him. Pretty much this is a really nice fuse holder. All of it's weatherproof. So this is to be mounted relatively close to the brake master cylinder. And these are replaceable, of course, with the fuse being replaceable. If I can open this up with one hand, that would be nice, but it's really tough when you're holding the camera. It gives him the ability to service it pretty easily. So we have a fuse in here for his ignition coils, and then we have a relay for that. I have many reasons why I chose to go this route, but it's significantly much more reliable. So that's the ignition sub harness. And as I said, that would just hook over here into the engine harness like so. So it would just plug in here and everything's all watertight and super, super tight in terms of its seal. So that's really, really nice for Andrew. So aside from that, it's pretty much the whole harness. Came out really good, as I said. Really stoked with the results. And if you guys have any questions or need a harness from me or want some work done of this nature, let me know. And I do a lot of 13B stuff. Done JZs, done Miatas, done a lot of oddball engines, but I love this stuff. And hopefully this gives you an idea of some of the big things we have planned for 2024. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you've gone through the past 10 minutes and 50 seconds, that is the rundown of this beautiful, beautiful masterpiece here. So peace.